The fear trade has brought investors back to the gold market as equities and oil continue to struggle. And our next guest says fear is good in the market, not greed. Charlie Bilello joins us now in studio. He's with Pension Partners. Charlie, good to have you on the show.
Good to be with you.
So I know you've been working on some research here, looking at gold versus equities, research dating back to the 70s.
Yeah.
What's sticking out for you?
So you tend to see these long cycles of outperformance where in the 1970s, starting from 1972 after the gold exited the gold standard, you saw this huge run in gold from 1972 to the peak in 1980, right. And equities didn't do very much. Now from there, obviously there was a lot of bullishness in gold. People were optimistic. Inflation was high, interest rates were high. It was supposed to be a great environment for gold going forward. Now what happened? Things flipped around. Equities had this huge bull market run from the early 1980s all the way up to 1999. Gold didn't do so well. It actually was down over that long stretch of time. Then you had a period from 2000 all the way to 2012 where gold had a great run. It was up every year from 2001 through 2012. Equities had two bear markets of 50+%. Last few years, we've seen the opposite again, with gold down 3 years in a row coming into this year and equities doing well. So you have these long cycles back and forth of outperformance from both sides.
So does the current scenario make sense to you? We have gold off to a good run. Obviously, we know what's happening in the equity markets here.
Yeah.
What do you make of what's happening?
So we look at gold in a different way than a lot of investors. We look at the relationship between gold and lumber. And we did a research piece on this last year and showing that the relationship happens to be very important for equities, and in particular equities and volatility going forward. So what we saw at the beginning of last year and really starting late last year is gold starting to really outperform lumber. And lumber is important for the U.S. economy because we're very consumer sensitive and housing is very important. So you don't want to see gold, which tends to be more of a risk-off commodity, more uncorrelated to the economy, outperforming lumber. And we started to see this early in the year, and then we see this spike in volatility. We see equities have their worst start in history.
That's really interesting. I mean, I've seen gold compared to many things, but not lumber. So it's interesting that you're focusing on that.
Yeah, it happens to be very important for the U.S. in particular because, again, we're so domestically oriented. We're very consumer-driven economy, and lumber is the closest commodity tied to that.
Well, let's look at gold versus oil now. As I mentioned, gold off to a good start here. Oil, not so much.
Yeah.
Is one of these two undervalued right now?
So, gold is very difficult, obviously, to value, right? What is its value at a given time? It's what someone's willing to pay for it. It's very, very difficult. But let's take a step back and look at the commodities, sector in general. This has been a terrible bear market for commodities now going on a few years, really since 2011. Commodities have been down every year coming into this year. You have crude oil down over 80% from its peak. You have gold down 40%, which is actually better than a lot of commodities coming into this year. So you have a lot of negativity, a lot of fear in terms of commodities going forward. Well, that's probably a good thing. And if we look at oil, at under $30 a barrel where it hit last week, maybe that was some type of capitulation there. And I would expect to see at least some stability, at least some stabilization in oil going forward. And we'll probably see that with the commodities sector in general.
And that's why you say fear is good.
Absolutely.
All right, Charlie Bilello of Pension Partners. Thanks so much for stopping by the studio.
Great to be with you.
And thanks for watching this edition of Kitco News. We have John Duty of Gold Stock Analyst coming up next.